The Mojave Desert at night is the loneliest place in the world. No lights, no houses, just endless stretches of nothing, miles of sand and rock, the occasional rusting road sign, and the long, straight line of highway disappearing into darkness. I had been driving for hours, hauling a load to Phoenix. My mind had slipped into that weird, hazy rhythm truckers know well, where the road and the hum of the engine blur together, and time starts to feel meaningless. Then, something appeared in my headlights. A car, stopped dead center in the road. I hit the brakes. The truck shuddered and groaned as I slowed to a stop, my headlights illuminating the scene ahead. It was an old, beat-up sedan. Looked like it had been sitting there a while. The driver's side door was open, swinging slightly in the wind. And the trunk? It was chained shut. Not locked. Chained. Like someone wanted to make sure that whatever was inside stayed there. My stomach twisted. I sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to decide what to do. Something about this felt wrong. Not like a broken-down car. Not like an accident. More like a trap. I reached for my CB mic, voice steady. This is Rig 271. I got an abandoned vehicle blocking Route 62, about 20 miles west of 29 Palms. No driver in sight. Anyone near? Silence. Then, through the static, a voice. Low, uneven. Don't stop. I felt my pulse spike. The CB had been on an empty channel. Who the hell was that? I glanced at my mirrors. Still no sign of another vehicle. Then, a gunshot rang out. I ducked instinctively, my heart hammering. The sound echoed through the open desert, bouncing between the hills. I scanned the road ahead. Nothing. Then, in the distance, a figure emerged from the dark. A man, tall, thin, holding a rifle. He walked toward me slowly, not running, not yelling, just walking, like he had all the time in the world. And the way he moved, something about it made my skin crawl. I reached for the gear shift, and the second I did, he sprinted. I slammed the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward, tires screaming against the pavement. I barely had time to swerve around the car before the guy fired another shot. The bullet pinged against my trailer. Then he was chasing me. I checked my mirrors. The headlights illuminated the road behind me, and the man was still running after the truck. Fast. Too fast. And just before I lost sight of him, he smiled, like he knew something I didn't. I floored it, pushing the truck past 80. Didn't stop. Didn't breathe. I just drove. And for the next 10 miles, I kept expecting another gunshot. Kept expecting to see that abandoned car in my mirrors again. But I didn't. The road stayed empty, like it had never happened at all. I didn't stop until I reached a truck stop outside Barstow. Pulled in, parked, and sat there, shaking. I climbed out, grabbed a coffee, and tried to convince myself I was just seeing things. But then, a guy behind the counter saw my face and frowned. "You all right, driver?" I hesitated. Then, against my better judgment, I told him. I told him about the car in the road. Told him about the gunshots in the dark. Told him about the man chasing me. By the time I finished, his face was pale. And when I mentioned the chain trunk, he froze. "You need to call the cops," he muttered. I frowned. "What? Why?" He swallowed hard. "Because you just described a car that's been missing for 3 years. A cold chill rushed down my spine. I set my coffee down, hands shaking. The guy leaned forward, lowering his voice. 3 years ago, a woman went missing out here. They found her car in the desert. Just like you described. Doors open, trunk chained shut, but no body." I felt my stomach drop. "The guy with the rifle?" I asked. The clerk's face darkened. "They never caught him." I left without saying another word. Didn't call the cops. Didn't want to know more. I just climbed back into my rig and got the hell out of Barstow. I don't stop for abandoned cars anymore. I don't check strange noises in the dark. Because now I know. Some people out in the desert don't want to be found. And some of them aren't the ones asking for help. I didn't see them get in. Didn't hear the door open. Didn't hear them breathing in the dark. But they were there. And they had been there for a long time. It started at a rundown gas station in rural Ohio. One of those places that felt off the second I pulled in. The kind of stop where the lights barely worked, the pavement was cracked, and the guy behind the counter never looked you in the eye. But I needed fuel. So I stepped out of my rig, stretched my legs, and started pumping. That's when I saw him. A thin guy in a dirty hoodie, standing near the station's dumpster, just watching me. At first, I figured he was just another drifter. Plenty of them pass through places like this. But the longer I stood there, the more uneasy I felt. His posture was too stiff, like he was waiting. Then, as I finished fueling up, he turned and walked away, not toward the road, not toward the store, but toward the back of my trailer. I frowned, stepping forward to get a better look, but by the time I rounded the side of my rig, he was gone. Vanished, like he'd never been there at all. A cold unease settled in my gut. Something about the whole thing felt wrong, but I told myself I was overthinking it. I paid for my fuel, climbed back into the cab, and pulled out onto the highway. And for the first hour, everything seemed normal. Then I heard it, a soft rustling sound, coming from the sleeper cab. My pulse spiked. I kept my eyes on the road, straining to listen. At first, it was faint, barely more than a whisper. Then, something shifted, the distinct sound of fabric moving. Someone was back there. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I reached for the CB mic, my voice steady. "This is Rig 211. I got a situation, unauthorized movement in my cab. Anyone near Route 23? A few seconds of silence. Then, a voice crackled through. "Get to a police station." I nodded to myself, didn't answer, didn't turn around, just checked the GPS. Closest station was 30 miles ahead. I pressed the gas pedal harder, didn't say a word, didn't check the mirrors, just focused on the road. But behind me, the rustling continued. They knew I had heard them. I could feel it. The air in the cab felt heavier, tighter, like something was waiting. Then, one of them whispered something, too low for me to hear. Then another snickered, like this was funny to them, like they weren't hiding, like they were waiting for me to notice them. I drove faster. The station was still 20 miles ahead. I kept my foot on the gas, hands tight around the wheel. Then, something moved closer, a shift in weight, the sound of slow footsteps, and then a voice. "You should pull over." I didn't. I drove faster. The truck roared down the empty highway. The figures in the sleeper weren't laughing anymore. They were whispering. Then, I heard something click, a sound that made my stomach twist into knots. A knife opening. I spotted the police station before they did. A small brick building on the right, parking lot mostly empty. I didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. I pulled straight in, slammed the brakes, and threw open the door. The second I hit the pavement, a squad car's lights flashed on. The figures in the back? They didn't even try to run. By the time the officers opened the sleeper cab, all three were sitting there, still, like they'd been waiting to be caught. One of them, a thin guy with greasy hair, just smiled. And in his hands? A knife. The cops hauled them out one by one, asked me questions, checked my truck. And you know what the scariest part was? None of them had IDs. No wallets. No bags. No trace of who they were. Like they had just appeared. I don't know what they wanted. I don't know why they got in my truck. But the thought that keeps me up at night, the thing that still makes my skin crawl, how long were they in there before I noticed? I don't stop at sketchy gas stations anymore. I don't ignore that gut feeling when something feels wrong. And I sure as hell check my sleeper cab before every trip. Because some hitchhikers don't wait on the side of the road. They wait inside your truck. I was somewhere in North Dakota, hauling a load through a deserted stretch of highway with nothing but endless fields and frozen dirt roads stretching into the distance. It was past midnight, and the road was so quiet it felt like I was the only person left in the world. Then I saw something lying in the middle of the road. A woman's dress, neatly folded, placed there deliberately, like someone was waiting for me to find it. I slowed down, my heart already beating a little faster. The fabric was pale, fluttering slightly in the wind. At first, I thought maybe it had blown out of someone's car. Then, a few yards ahead, I saw a pair of shoes. Small, children's shoes, perfectly lined up, side by side. A cold chill crawled up my spine. I checked my mirrors. The highway behind me was empty. Nothing but the endless dark. I turned my high beams on, and up ahead, lying in the dirt by the shoulder, I saw more clothes. A child's jacket, a single sock, scattered, leading into the tall grass beside the road, like someone had been dragged. I pulled over, my hands gripping the wheel. Something about this felt wrong. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out of the cab, and into the bitter cold. The wind howled across the open fields. No sound, no movement, just me and the scattered clothes. Then, from somewhere in the distance, I heard a child scream. The sound cut through the night. High, terrified, coming from the tall grass. My breath froze in my throat. Another scream, closer now. I took a step forward. Another. The grass whispered against itself, swaying in the cold wind. Something inside me screamed to go back, to get in the truck and leave. Then, from the darkness, a woman's voice called out, "Help, please, he has my daughter." Every instinct told me this was a trap, but I couldn't ignore that voice. I took another step, shining my flashlight into the grass. The beam barely cut through the shadows. Then, something moved. A shape, low to the ground, crawling. I froze. The woman's voice called out again, desperate now. "Please, he's hurting her." Then the child screamed again, louder, closer, like she was right there in the darkness. I swallowed hard, my hands shaking. I took one more step. Then, my flashlight caught something between the grass blades. A speaker. My blood turned to ice. The screams weren't real. They were recorded, playing on a loop. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. I turned around, heart hammering. A shadow shifted near my truck. A figure, tall, watching. I took a step back, and another shadow moved. Then another. The grass around me stirred. Not from the wind, from something else. Something moving, surrounding me. I didn't think, didn't wait. I ran, bolted for the truck. My boots slammed against the pavement, my breath sharp and ragged. The figures were moving fast now, closing in from both sides. I reached the cab, yanked the door open, and a hand grabbed my wrist. Cold, thin, fingers too long. I ripped free, throwing myself inside and slamming the door. Locked it, turned the key. The engine roared to life. And in my mirrors, I saw them. 4, maybe 5 figures, standing in the grass, not moving, not running, just watching me. Their faces were hidden in the dark, but I could feel it, feel their eyes, like they were waiting for me to step out again. I threw the truck into gear. The tires screeched against the pavement as I tore down the highway. Didn't look back, didn't check the mirrors again, just drove. And over the sound of my engine, I heard something over the CB, a voice, soft, amused. "Next time, stop." I didn't sleep that night, didn't stop driving until I hit a busy truck stop hours later. I pulled in, parked under the brightest lights I could find, tried to steady my breath. Then I checked the local news. No missing children, no kidnappings, no reports of a woman screaming for help. Nothing, like it had never happened at all. I don't stop for strange things in the road anymore. I don't chase sounds into the dark, because now I know, some screams aren't real. They're just bait. And if I had taken one more step, I wouldn't be here to tell the story.